What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So, once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
Welcome back to Cold Case Project, everyone. I'm your host, Tony. This week, we delve into the perplexing disappearance of a vibrant young artist from Pensacola, Florida. A case that has left the community searching for answers for over a decade. The story of 25-year-old Tiffany Daniels. Tiffany Daniels was a bright light in Pensacola, Florida. It was August of 2013, and Tiffany, a talented and skilled painter, had found her niche working full-time at Pensacola State College. She was deeply involved in the theater department, designing and constructing sets, and handling the crucial task of set dressing. For someone with her artistic soul, this was more than just a job. It was a passion, a place where her creativity could flourish. Those who knew Tiffany described her as a free spirit, someone who embraced life with a love for travel and adventure. When she wasn't immersed in the world of theater, you could often find her exploring the natural beauty of Florida, biking along scenic trails, riding the waves while surfing, hiking through lush landscapes, or camping under the starry sky. And if she happened to be indoors, chances are she was either lost in the strokes of her paintbrush or indulging in another of her great loves, dancing. Tiffany was known for hosting lively dance parties at her home. Friends would gather from all corners of town, drawn by her infectious energy and the promise of a night filled with music and laughter. With Tiffany at the helm, a good time was practically guaranteed. However, like many of us, Tiffany's life wasn't without its complexities. Her boyfriend was preparing to leave Pensacola, having been accepted into a prestigious robotics program in Austin, Texas. This impending departure undoubtedly cast a shadow. Adding to her emotional landscape were growing financial pressures. Years of unreliable roommates failing to pay their share of the rent had left Tiffany in a precarious situation. In an attempt to stabilize her finances, she rented a room to a friend's father. While this arrangement provided financial relief and a more mature presence in the household, it caused friction with her family, who felt uneasy about the significant age gap and the unconventional living situation. The morning of August 12, 2013, just one day after her boyfriend had moved to Texas, brought an unusual start to Tiffany's day. According to reports, she was awake and active much earlier than her normal routine, seen going in and out of the house between the hours of 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock a.m. Where she was during those early morning hours remains a mystery. Despite this unusual start, she arrived at work at Pensacola State College on time. But the workday would take an unexpected turn. According to her supervisor, a man often referred to as Bob, Tiffany allegedly requested to leave early. She further explained that she might need the rest of the week off, offering no specific reason for this request. Tiffany clocked out at 4:43 p.m. that Monday afternoon, and from that moment on, as far as anyone knows, she vanished. Days turned into nights, and when Tiffany's roommate, Gary Nichols, failed to see her or hear from her, a growing unease settled in. He reached out to his daughter, Noelle, asking her to contact Tiffanys' family and express his concern that she might be missing. For Cindy Daniels, Tiffanys' mother, the message she received was one no parent ever wants to read. She immediately contacted the authorities, and an investigation into the disappearance of her vibrant daughter began. Over the next few days, authorities began to meticulously examine every aspect of Tiffanys' life, desperately searching for any clue that might lead them to her vehicle or, more importantly, to Tiffany herself. Days turned into a week, and then more. Finally, a significant discovery was made. Tiffanys' gray 1999 Toyota 4Runner was found abandoned in the parking lot of the beach on Santa Rosa Island, not far from her home. Inside the vehicle were some of her paintings, clothing, and other personal effects. But there was no sign of Tiffany. The years that followed would be marked by a series of unverified sightings, each one offering a fleeting moment of hope before fading into uncertainty. Several individuals within Tiffanys' personal life would fall under the cloud of suspicion, their actions and statements scrutinized for any hint of involvement. Throughout all, Tiffanys' family has remained unwavering in their fight, tirelessly working to keep her case in the public eye, hoping against hope that they might one day uncover the truth about what happened to their beloved daughter. And so, the fundamental questions remain unanswered. Did Tiffany, this free-spirited and adventurous young woman, simply choose to walk away from her life in Pensacola? Was she overwhelmed by the combined weight of sadness over her boyfriend's departure and her financial difficulties, leading her to a tragic decision? Could a late-night swim have turned into a devastating accident? Or is it possible that Tiffany became a victim of abduction, perhaps even ensnared in the dark world of human trafficking? Or was she victimized by a random act of violence, possibly at the hands of someone she knew and perhaps even trusted? Tiffany Heaven Daniels was born on March 11th, 1988, in Dallas, Texas, to her parents, Cindy and Rodney. Despite her Texas birthplace, Tiffany and her family made their home in the Pensacola area of Florida, where she would spend the majority of her life. It's worth noting that in one interview, Cindy listed Tiffany and her daughter Angela as her only children. However, in subsequent media coverage, Candace McAdams has also been identified as Tiffany's sister, and Cindy herself occasionally referred to Tiffany's sisters. While the exact family dynamics aren't central to the case, it's a minor point of confusion in the available information. Pensacola, the westernmost city in the Florida Panhandle and the county seat of Escambia County, boasts a local population of nearly 52,000 residents. Beyond its year-round inhabitants, Pensacola transforms into a popular destination during the summer months, drawing vacationers eager to enjoy its beautiful beaches and vibrant nightlife. Situated on Pensacola Bay, a seaport protected by the barrier island of Santa Rosa and leading out into the Gulf of Mexico, Pensacola offered Tiffany a backdrop of natural beauty that undoubtedly resonated with her artistic and adventurous spirit. Tiffany was a young woman who possessed an undeniable charisma, a magnetism that naturally drew people to her. Making friends seemed effortless for her, a testament to her deep compassion and her ability to find humor and light in almost any situation. Those who knew her often described her as fun-loving and free-spirited, someone who lived life on her own terms and paid little attention to societal norms or the opinions of those who might try to confine her. In an interview, her mother, Cindy, beautifully captured this essence, stating, "Tiffany marched to the beat of a different drummer." Artists are like that. They get perspective out of things that you and I would not see when we look at them. From a young age, Tiffany's love for art was evident, and she possessed a natural talent for painting. This artistic inclination would become a lifelong passion, weaving its way into all aspects of her world. Her artistic mind also shaped her appreciation for beauty, drawing her to picturesque locations and individuals who shared her passion for creative expression. Almost everyone who encountered Tiffany described her as the kind of beautiful soul you wanted to have around you, bubbly, full of energy, and always eager to share an adventure. Tiffany's sister, Candace, offered a poignant description of her, saying, "Everybody loved Tiffany. Tiffany is a light. That's the best way I could describe her. When you're around her, you just feel light. Everything gets brighter, more colorful, more beautiful. Tiffany's adventurous spirit found a perfect outlet in her love of nature. She was often found outdoors, embracing an active lifestyle. Cycling was a particular passion, and she frequently explored her surroundings on her bike. This love for movement and growth was even reflected in tattoos on the tops of her feet, depicting seeds sprouting into vines and blossoming flowers. Beyond cycling, Tiffany enjoyed hiking and camping. If an activity allowed her to immerse herself in the beauty of the world around her, Tiffany was all in. Her father, Rodney, affectionately described her as a butterfly girl, explaining she would be talking or doing something, and if a butterfly came by, she'd take off and follow it. Her family had grown accustomed to her spontaneous nature over the years, knowing that at a moment's notice, she might completely change her plans for the day to drive down to the beach for a swim or hop on her bike for hours, simply reveling in the freedom of escaping the everyday pressures of traffic and city life. Tiffany's artistic talents were apparent to her instructors even in high school, where she excelled in the arts, particularly painting. It was during this time that she began to seriously hone her craft, even considering a career in painting. However, as she progressed through college, her career aspirations would evolve. Tiffany distinguished herself not only as a gifted artist, but also as a bright and reliable young woman with a strong, independent streak, unafraid to forge her own path. She graduated from high school with a challenging curriculum of advanced placement classes and received multiple scholarship offers, a testament to her intelligence and dedication. Interestingly, while surrounded by a close circle of friends, some noted a loner aspect to her personality. She enjoyed solitary pursuits, finding solace in nature, often spending evenings alone on the beach or hiking by herself, especially when she needed space or was navigating personal difficulties. Another deep passion in Tiffany's life was dance. She could often be found twirling on the dance floor with friends. Her love for swing dancing, in particular, led her to expand her social circle as she grew older, connecting with many like-minded individuals who would often join her for nights out. While details of Tiffany's life prior to the years leading up to her disappearance are somewhat limited, the picture that emerges is of a loving and caring individual with a tremendous sense of humor and an ability to brighten the day of anyone she knew. She was the kind of person who enriched the lives of those around her, leading to a wide and diverse circle of friends. However, this very kindness and compassionate nature also left her vulnerable to being taken advantage of or pushed beyond her comfort zone. Her father noted that Tiffany was the kind of person that would avoid confrontation at all costs. Tiffany pursued her higher education at both Pensacola State College and the University of West Florida. Her time in college was marked by a balance of fun, travel, and academic pursuits, but also by an ongoing exploration of her future and career aspirations. According to her mother, Tiffany considered several different paths, including art, marine biology, and international business. When asked about what she truly wished to do, Cindy believed Tiffany was leaning towards either the arts or the sciences, fields that truly captured her heart. Tiffany also harbored a desire to travel internationally, perhaps teaching English or volunteering in less fortunate communities. During her college years, Tiffany had the opportunity to travel to Europe with friends. It was during this time that she created a profile on the website Couchsurfing, a platform designed to connect travelers with local hosts. According to her profile, created in 2008, she listed herself as learning both French and Spanish. Reflecting on her experience with the website, Tiffany wrote, "I've been hosted on Couchsurfing once while in Florence and facilitated the hosting of several couch surfers in Pensacola, including picking them up at the Greyhound station and showing them around the area." Her profile also referenced spending time in Israel and embarking on a cross-North America road trip with friends in a 1964 Ford Galaxy 500, which she fondly referred to as a classic road trip. Her listed interests on the site included theater, dancing, partying, traveling, pottery, drawing, blues music, cycling, surfing, and beaches, a diverse range that truly reflected her multifaceted personality. After finishing her formal education, Tiffany ventured out into the world on her own. She initially moved in with a college friend, and they lived together for a period. When that living arrangement ended, she returned home to her family for a short time. But her independent spirit soon called her back out, and she moved into a home across Pensacola Bay, near Pickens Park. According to her mother, Tiffany lived with several roommates, mostly male, and had a romantic relationship with one of them. Over time, roommates moved on, and eventually, her boyfriend also relocated. The home was owned by a woman named Sarah, and when Tiffany became the sole remaining resident, she signed the lease and took over all responsibilities, including rent, utilities, and finding new roommates if needed. This led to a revolving door of roommates, some of whom would later cause Tiffany significant financial stress due to their failure to contribute their share of the expenses. Eventually, Tiffany secured a job at Pensacola State College, initially part-time and later full-time, working in the theater department. Her direct supervisor, often referred to as Bob, became a significant figure in her life, described by some as her mentor. It was in this role that Tiffany could truly utilize her artistic talents, painting the scenes and backdrops for various theatrical productions. Her mother proudly recalled, "She built scenes for them and painted them. Chicago was one of the ones she did a fantastic job on." In 2012, Tiffany's life took a romantic turn when she met and fell in love with a man named Gray Thomas. Thomas was a bright individual who shared Tiffany's love for dancing, and the two connected deeply and quickly. It was evident to everyone around Tiffany that she was completely smitten with Thomas, and the feeling was mutual. Cindy Daniels later fondly remembered, "He and Tiffany were cute as a button together. We thought this might be the one." Thomas was described as a very kind young man with a talent for robotics. Tiffany's sister, Candace, noted that they seemed to have a very strong connection and a shared passion for dance. This love of dance often played out at Tiffany's house, which she frequently transformed into a lively dance hall for her friends. Furniture would be moved aside to create a larger dancing area, and the air would be filled with the sounds of swing, jazz, blues, and big band music late into the night. Friends would spill out onto the porch for breaks, laughing and enjoying the camaraderie. One of these friends, Terry Strickland, poignantly recalled, "I don't remember the exact moment that we met, but I'm pretty sure I was standing awkwardly on the side of the dance floor. All the other dancers wouldn't give me the time of day, but she made a point to ask me to dance. She was somebody who cared about people, everybody." While Tiffany's personal life seemed to be blossoming, some underlying issues were beginning to surface. Her boundless compassion for others was increasingly becoming a point of tension between her free-spirited nature and the practical constraints of a world often driven by structure and finances. Her family first noticed this in July of 2013. In the preceding months, Tiffany had been sharing her home with a rotating cast of roommates, often friends in need of a place to stay or strangers she had found through Craigslist. The usual arrangement involved roommates paying rent and splitting utilities. However, several individuals had taken advantage of Tiffany's inherent kindness. Cindy later explained, "Most of the time, she was too nice. She didn't want to ask for the rent or the utilities when they were due. So, we found out that she was paying for things up front and then trying to collect from the roommates. This situation was clearly not sustainable, and Tiffany often found herself in a financially precarious position. Hoping to resolve her ongoing roommate issues and seeking the stability of a more mature and financially responsible individual, Tiffany posted an ad on Craigslist for a new roommate. To her surprise, the ad was answered by 54-year-old Gary Nichols, the father of one of her friends, Noelle Nichols. Gary had recently separated from his wife and was looking for a place to stay. While Tiffany was optimistic about the prospect of a more reliable roommate, her family harbored reservations about an older man living with their then 25-year-old daughter. Cindy expressed her discomfort, saying, "We didn't feel comfortable with it because we thought it would be kind of odd. I didn't want Tiffany to feel like she had a father living with her." Despite her family's concerns, Tiffany, ever determined to follow her own path, welcomed Gary into her home in late July of 2013. Initially, things went well. Gary was dependable consistently paying his share of the rent and utilities on time. This financial stability brought a much-needed sense of relief to Tiffany. Beyond the financial aspect, Gary and Tiffany also discovered shared interests, including cycling and gardening. Noelle, Gary's daughter, recalled, "Tiffany was very welcoming to my dad. She invited him to the first party she threw. Despite the significant age difference, the two seemed to get along well." Gary, while trying not to intrude on his younger roommate's life, couldn't always suppress his fatherly instincts. However, Tiffany was an adult and didn't feel obligated to share every detail of her life or her plans with him. While Tiffany's financial situation had improved considerably, lifting some of the emotional burden she had been carrying, another significant weight was pressing on her mind: the impending departure of her boyfriend, Gray Thomas. After a year of a loving relationship, Thomas had been accepted into the robotics program at the University of Texas in Austin. Tiffany faced a difficult decision. While she loved her life in Pensacola, her heart was also deeply connected to Thomas. He had asked Tiffany to join him in Austin, and she had seriously considered the proposition. Austin, known for its thriving arts culture, seemed like a place where Tiffany's creative spirit would flourish. Candace described this pivotal time in her sister's life, saying, "Austin would have been a great town for Tiffany. She's very creative, and it's a creative town," but she was torn. Tiffany discussed the possibility with friends and family. Tiffany was grappling with the difficult decision of whether or not to move to Austin with her boyfriend, Gray Thomas. She confided in friends and family about the proposition, weighing the pros and cons of leaving her established life in Pensacola for an uncertain future in a new city. Ultimately, she made the difficult choice to stay in Florida, at least for the time being. Cindy later recalled, "I think she wanted to be with Gray, but I don't think she wanted to move. It was so funny because she was always wanting to go travel and do this and do that. Yet when it came down to actually moving, she had put her feet down and said, 'No, I'm not moving. I'm not leaving.'" Though it undoubtedly caused her heartache, Tiffany told Gray that she wouldn't be moving to Austin. The two had heartfelt conversations about the future of their relationship and decided to try navigating a long-distance connection. Tiffany assured him that she would visit him in Austin whenever she could. This seemed to ease some of the sadness surrounding his impending move. Tiffany expressed to friends that while she was sad to see him go, she was also excited about the possibility of visiting him and experiencing Austin for herself. And, as her adventurous spirit often led her to believe, who knew what the future held? Perhaps Austin would eventually call to her, and she would find herself following the man she loved. Thomas was scheduled to leave on the morning of Sunday, August 11th, 2013. Wanting to cherish every last moment with him, Tiffany invited him over for breakfast. They spent the morning together, talking about their possible future as a couple. It's been suggested that during this final breakfast, Thomas made at least one last plea for Tiffany to change her mind and join him in Austin. However, Tiffany reportedly remained firm in her decision to stay in Pensacola, but she reiterated her promise to visit him as soon as he was settled. The two parted ways shortly after breakfast when Thomas finally hit the road for his drive to Austin. According to friends, Tiffany was understandably sad about his departure. However, it was clear that her love for Thomas was strong, and she was committed to seeing where their relationship could go despite the distance. While a long-distance relationship presented its challenges, the free-spirited Tiffany, known for her impulsive adventures, wasn't overly concerned. As many of her friends and family members have noted, it wouldn't have been out of character for her to take off on a whim, and if she truly wanted to go to Austin, she would simply make it happen. When Gray left, Gary Nichols was present at the house. He later reported that Tiffany seemed a little down, not her usual bubbly self. Given the circumstances, this was entirely expected. Regardless of her emotional state, Tiffany had plans for the evening. The theater department at Pensacola State College was beginning work on the play Spamalot, and Tiffany had research to do related to her work on the production. Whether it was solely due to the need for research, a desire for some light-hearted distraction to ease her sadness, or a combination of both, she had plans to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the iconic movie that the play is partly based on. Gary Nichols joined her for the movie night. They laughed and enjoyed the film together. And although a hint of sadness lingered, Tiffany seemed lighter and didn't display any outward signs that anything major was amiss beyond the obvious absence of Thomas. When the film ended, Nichols and Tiffany said goodnight to one another and retired to their respective bedrooms. According to Tiffany's father, Rodney, while his daughter possessed many admirable qualities, being an early riser was not one of them. In an interview, he stated, if for some reason she had to be at school at 7 o'clock, she probably wasn't going to leave until 5 till, or maybe right at 7 o'clock. Tiffany typically arrived at work around 8 a.m., though sometimes a bit earlier. This makes the report later given by Gary Nichols about the morning of her disappearance somewhat out of character. According to Nichols, he was awakened by strange sound between 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. on Monday, August 12th. He described the sounds as what he believed to be the front door opening and closing multiple times. Not thinking too much of it at the time, Nichols drifted back to sleep. When he woke up later that morning to begin his day, he went about his usual routine, which involved leaving for work at approximately 7 o'clock a.m. As he stepped outside, he noticed that Tiffany's gray 1999 Toyota 4Runner was gone. This was out of the ordinary, as they hadn't discussed their plans for the day. While it struck him as odd, Nichols didn't dwell on it and proceeded to work. Tiffany arrived at work for her normal shift that day, and initially, nothing seemed out of the ordinary about her behavior. However, a few hours into her shift, according to her supervisor, Bob, Tiffany requested to leave work early. She further explained that she had some things going on, though she didn't specify what those things were. She allegedly mentioned the possibility of running out of gas. In addition to leaving early, she indicated that she might need some time off, possibly the rest of the week, but again, she didn't provide any details that might suggest the reason for this time off. An interesting detail to note is that while Tiffany was telling her boss she needed time off, she had no such conversations with friends or family members about taking time off, plans to travel, or anything else that might have necessitated her absence from work. Given that this was the first her supervisor had heard of this potential time off, it seems reasonable to assume that whatever had come up was unplanned. Some have speculated that Tiffany simply wanted some time off to clear her mind and process Thomas's departure, while others believe it's possible she may have decided on a whim, as was her nature, to travel or spend a few days hiking, biking, or simply relaxing. However, the details surrounding Tiffany requesting time off and asking to leave early have come under scrutiny from her family. According to Cindy, Tiffany's supervisor, Bob, was the only person who claimed to have knowledge that Tiffany was planning to need time off. Cindy has expressed suspicion about the fact that Bob was later reportedly uncooperative with police and didn't provide much information. It's also significant to note that when looking at the information available about Tiffany's disappearance, the clothing she was wearing the day she vanished is never listed. This is because no one, outside of Bob, knows for sure what she was wearing. Cindy was also asked about Bob and Tiffany's relationship, at which point she revealed that Bob had allegedly played a significant role in Tiffany's decision not to move to Austin. According to Cindy, Bob had told Tiffany that Austin was no place for an artist and that she should stay in Pensacola, where he would help her sell her art. What's particularly interesting about this is that Austin has a thriving and well-regarded art community and would have likely been a supportive environment for Tiffany to pursue her artistic career. Another fascinating detail that Cindy shared years later, during the filming of the television show Disappeared, involved one of the audio technicians who arrived at her home. This young woman, who had reportedly attended Pensacola State College, allegedly told Cindy that Bob had a reputation for fraternizing with female students and that this was widely known among students and possibly even some faculty members on campus. When Cindy was directly asked during an interview on the podcast Unfound whether or not she was aware of any possible romantic relationship between Tiffany and Bob, she alluded to the fact that Tiffany may have mentioned to one of her sisters that she had, in the past, been romantically involved with her supervisor and mentor, though the timeline of this alleged relationship remains unknown. It should also be noted that Pensacola State College reportedly did not allow the disappeared crew to film on campus, allegedly suggesting that the case brought negative publicity to the university. The afternoon she disappeared, Tiffany clocked out of work at 4:43 p.m., walked out of Pensacola State College, and was, as far as anyone knows, never seen again. The fact that Tiffany had disappeared wasn't immediately noted, as no one was in the habit of constantly checking in with her, and she didn't have any specific plans with anyone that she failed to keep. The first inkling that something might be wrong came around 10 p.m. that evening. Gary Nichols was home, but hadn't seen Tiffany all day. As the day turned into night and the hours continued to pass without any sign of her, his paternal instincts began to kick in, and he started to worry. He made several calls to Tiffany's cell phone, but she didn't answer. After multiple failed attempts, he called his daughter, Noelle. According to Noelle, he called me probably around 10 o'clock, and he was starting to get concerned because he hadn't seen her all day, and he didn't think she'd been back to the house. I told him he was overreacting and that she was an adult, and that maybe she just didn't want to hang out with him all the time. Nichols accepted his daughter's reasoning and assumed he was simply overreacting. He continued with his evening and went to sleep, not giving it much more thought. However, when he awoke the next morning for work, he found that Tiffany still wasn't home. He made several more calls to her phone, but again, there was no answer. Trying to heed his daughter's advice and accept that Tiffany was an adult capable of taking care of herself, he left for the day. It wasn't until he returned home from work that Tuesday evening that a deeper sense of unease began to settle in. When he entered the home, he found the light switches unresponsive. After checking around, Nichols discovered that the power to the home had been cut off. Assuming that Tiffany had somehow failed to pay the bill, something that was completely unlike her responsible nature, he called his daughter, his concern now palpable. This call was made on Wednesday, 2 days after Tiffany was last seen at work. At this point, Nichols requested that Noelle get in touch with Tiffany's family and let them know what was happening, hoping that they might be aware of her whereabouts and that she had simply not told him. But with the power turned off and no signs of Tiffany having returned home at any point, he couldn't shake his growing suspicions. Several more days would pass between the time that Nichols first suspected something strange was going on and the time that Noelle finally made contact with Tiffany's mother. According to Cindy, she was first notified on Saturday, August 17th. The reason for the delay between Nichols telling Noelle to reach out and her actually doing so has never been clearly explained. In a statement, Cindy later said, "I was here in the house, and I got a Facebook private message from a young lady named Noelle Nichols, and she told me that her father was Tiffany's roommate and he had not seen Tiffany since Sunday. I thought, okay, she has gone with someone, and she's just having a good time, and she's failed to tell anyone. And I'm going to call her voicemail and say, 'This is your mom. I need to hear from you,' and I'll hear from her at that point in time. It never crossed my thoughts that she could possibly be missing, as in missing. Cindy and Noelle immediately made plans to try and locate Tiffany by reaching out to her extensive network of friends. They made phone calls, sent Facebook messages, and left voicemails. They quickly discovered that almost everyone they spoke to hadn't seen or spoken to Tiffany for days, and most, if not all, assumed that Tiffany was simply spending time with someone else, given her independent nature. As they neared the end of their list of contacts, it became increasingly apparent that Tiffany was not with any of her other friends, and no one had any idea where she could possibly be. Calls were then placed to Tiffany's workplace, Pensacola State College. It was during these calls that Cindy and Noelle first learned that Tiffany had told her supervisor, Bob, that she might be needing time off. Cindy later recalled, "I know that she had a lot on her mind that week, and she had told her boss that she might not be able to come into work the rest of the week because she had some things she had to take care of. That we don't know what that was all about." As concern grew and Tiffany remained unlocated, Cindy made the difficult decision to file a missing persons report. Because her residence was just outside the city limits of Pensacola, the sheriff's department dispatched 3 officers to her home to take the report. Cindy was adamant that while Tiffany was known to travel and act spontaneously, she never failed to maintain contact with someone or inform them of her whereabouts and plans. However, the sheriff's department didn't appear to be overly concerned, nor did they treat the report as a significant sign that anything serious was amiss. They went through a list of her friends, places she might have gone, and people who might be able to provide information. Ultimately, Cindy was told that Tiffany was a 25-year-old woman, an adult, and if she elected to leave or run off without telling anyone, there wasn't a whole lot the sheriff's department could do. Understandably angry and frustrated by the way her report was being handled and feeling that she wasn't being taken seriously, Cindy instructed the deputy to file the report and find her daughter. However, because Cindy lived outside the city limits, making her home the jurisdiction of a sheriff's department, and Tiffany's last known residence was within the city limits, the sheriff's department informed Cindy that the case would need to be handled by the Pensacola Police Department. This jurisdictional issue would unfortunately lead to further delays and frustrations in the initial stages of the investigation. The initial response from law enforcement was slow and, from Cindy's perspective, dismissive. The precious hours and days following Tiffany's disappearance were critical, and the jurisdictional confusion only added to the family's growing anxiety. As we've heard, the initial lack of any clear motive or obvious signs of foul play led to some early speculation that Tiffany might have simply chosen to leave. She was described as a free spirit, someone who enjoyed spontaneous adventures. Could she have packed her car and taken off on a whim, perhaps needing time and space after her boyfriend's departure? While Tiffany certainly had an independent streak, the fact that her personal belongings, including paintings and clothing, were left in her abandoned vehicle on Santa Rosa Island cast serious doubt on this theory. Someone planning to start a new life or go on an extended trip would likely take more personal items with them. Furthermore, her consistent communication with family and friends, even during her spontaneous outings, makes a complete and unexplained departure seem highly unlikely. Another early theory, fueled by the sadness surrounding her boyfriend leaving and her past financial struggles, was the possibility of suicide. Could Tiffany have been overwhelmed and made a tragic decision? While we can't definitively rule anything out, those who knew Tiffany best consistently describe her as someone full of life and joy, even in the face of challenges. While she may have been down after Gray's departure, there's no indication she was in a state of deep despair. The execution-style nature of many suicides also doesn't align with the circumstances of her disappearance, where no body has ever been found. The discovery of her car near the beach on Santa Rosa Island also raised the possibility of an accidental drowning. Could Tiffany have gone for a late-night swim and been caught in a current or faced some other unforeseen danger in the water? While Pensacola is a coastal area and Tiffany enjoyed being near the water, there's no direct evidence to support this theory. There were no reports of unusual water conditions that night, and again, the lack of a body makes this difficult to confirm. It's also worth noting that if she had intended to go for a swim, it's unclear why her personal belongings would have been left in her car. The specter of abduction and human trafficking is a grim possibility that unfortunately cannot be dismissed in any missing persons case, particularly involving a young woman. While there's no specific evidence directly linking Tiffany's disappearance to human trafficking, the lack of any other clear explanation leaves this as a terrifying potential scenario. However, without any witnesses or concrete evidence pointing in this direction, it remains a speculative theory. This brings us to the most unsettling possibility, that Tiffany was the victim of a crime, possibly a random act of violence, or, more disturbingly, violence at the hands of someone she knew and trusted. The lack of forced entry into her home, as reported by Gary Nichols, could suggest that Tiffany either knew her attacker or that the attacker had a way to enter without causing alarm. The role of Tiffany's supervisor, Bob, remains a significant point of intrigue and suspicion for her family. His seemingly uncooperative behavior with the police, his alleged attempts to dissuade Tiffany from moving to Austin, and the rumors of inappropriate behavior with female students paint a concerning picture. Cindy's revelation about a possible past romantic involvement between Tiffany and Bob, however brief or long-lasting, adds another layer of complexity to this relationship. Could Bob have been more involved in Tiffany's disappearance than he let on? Did their relationship sour? Did he have a motive for wanting her to stay in Pensacola? The fact that Pensacola State College was reportedly resistant to the disappeared crew filming on campus also raises eyebrows. While this could simply be a desire to avoid negative publicity, It could also suggest a reluctance to have a closer look at events surrounding Tiffanys' employment there. The early morning activity reported by Gary Nichols, the repeated opening and closing of the front door, is also a crucial detail. Who was Tiffany meeting or interacting with in those early hours? Was it someone she knew? Could this have been the person who ultimately harmed her? The fact that her car was later found abandoned suggests that she likely didn't drive it to her final destination, wherever that may have been. My own thoughts lean towards the possibility of foul play, potentially involving someone Tiffany knew. The circumstances surrounding her departure from work, the abandoned vehicle, and the lack of any credible evidence supporting a voluntary disappearance or accidental death point to a more sinister scenario. The behavior of certain individuals in her life, particularly Bob, warrants further scrutiny, even after all these years. The early morning activity at her home also feels significant and deserves more investigation if any new leads were to emerge. The lack of a body in this case makes it incredibly challenging. Without that crucial piece of evidence, it's difficult to definitively determine what happened to Tiffany. However, the dedication of her family and the continued efforts of cold case investigators offer a glimmer of hope that one day, the truth will finally surface. That brings us to the end of another episode of Cold Case Project. The disappearance of Tiffany Daniels remains a haunting reminder that answers are still out there, waiting to be found. If you have any information, no matter how small it may seem, regarding the disappearance of 25-year-old Tiffany Daniels from Pensacola, Florida in August of 2013, please do the right thing and contact the Pensacola Police Department. Your tip could be the key that finally brings closure to her family. Thank you for spending your time with me, Tony, on Cold Case Project. Until next time, keep the search for truth alive.